grow a flower. One glass stem remained, glass petals scattered on the ground around it, just like so many others before it. He had no idea what killed it, and the last streaks of blood faded to blackness from the sky. Was it too much water? Had he given 3 cups when 2 was enough? Was the sun too strong? Too weak? And so he simply walked back to the road, head lowered and shoulders sagged. Can I just not grow a flower? He tripped over a cluster of flowers, too distracted to see them in the oppressive darkness. And in all the anger he felt, the boy let go. He ripped into those flowers. Leaf and flower flew into the growing darkness as he kicked and shredded them. Let them feel the cold like he did. Let them know the pain of seeing flower after flower die like he did. Let them die like he did every time another flower died. He took the empty envelope and tore it apart. It was just a scrap of spare paper anyways. Only the letter really said anything. When the envelope was no more than a fistful of confetti, he let it fall to the ground, slipping through his outstretched fingers. Let it all end. Grow a flower. When the boy was done, he sat down, dejected. He had done the exact opposite. The corpses of those flowers he clutched tightly in his hand. He had never tried to kill them before. It was so easy. It was too easy. Why do you kill my flowers? An old voice asked from behind him. He had no answer, but he spoke. They didn't deserve it. He had killed enough of them already, just trying to grow them. The note, he began. The note told you to kill my flowers? The old man asked. No. So, why did you kill them? I was angry. So many of them die, so many stems. He shoved the bulging bag at the man. Let me see the letter, the man asked, extending an outstretched hand and ignoring the bag of stems. Reading it, he frowned slightly. I suppose I see. You couldn't grow your own, so you decided to kill the flowers of others. No, said the boy. Well, yes, he muttered, looking down. Grow a flower. He recognized those words. They were written on the tiny pieces of envelope he had let fall. But there was something else written on them as well. He never thought to read inside the envelope. He knelt down and gathered the pieces of the torn envelope, anxiously looking back to the man. But when he looked up, the he was gone. Soon, all the pieces had been gathered, and he held them to the last bit of sunlight that dimly lit the sky, struggling to read the words. Grow a flower. Your flower has to be your own. There was a drawing of a flower, like the one in the note, but this flower was beautifully drawn, light glinting off unfurled petals that reached sky upward. The drawing itself almost seemed to glow in the growing darkness. Then the sun was gone, and it all went black. Grow a flower. Your flower has to be your own. The sun was gone, and flowers can't grow without sunlight. Even those flowers in the caves needed the faintest trace of light to grow. When the sun fell, he saw no more flowers. The brilliant hues and reds and blues were gone, replaced with black. Black, dark, cold. Kneeling down, shivering hands planted one of those stems that had once bled light into the ground. It would be barely enough to see, but he just had to see the path. A spark of light faintly illuminated the ground, before again fizzling out, never to be brought back again. He had killed yet another one. Grow a flower. Your flower has to be your own. He held all those dead stems tightly to his chest, kneeling on the ground. The cold was unbearable. It was so cold. He had failed, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, he cried. The tears watered the ground where he sat, some freezing before they could reach the ground and shattering like glass. They all flowed and flowed, all the guilt and sadness streaming down his face in an ever-increasing tide. He cried and cried, not holding anything back. The ground became wet as more and more tears came, but they did not slow. He failed. He failed. Grow a flower. Your flower has to be your own. He shed a tear for every single one of the dead, lifeless stems he clutched to his chest. He shed a tear for every petal that had fallen, every life his clumsy hands had ended. He shed a tear for every beautiful flower he killed, because in a way, he really had killed them all. He killed each and every one of them. Those that grew under the waves, those from beneath the ground, those from the prairies, those from the forests, and now, those from the mountain. When the tears finally stopped, the chill took even greater hold, turning even his heart cold. The boy opened his eyes. His tears were spent. They were pointless. The stems were dead. No number of tears could bring them back. Grow a flower. Your flower has to be your own. The instructions were simple. He had seen them in his mind time and time again. But now, when the boy looked down, a small flower grew from the ground where his tears had fallen. It was not large, rather small really, small enough to fit in the palm of his hand with room to spare. The stem was gnarly, coated by sharp, needle-like thorns, colored in ash and darkness, and the leaves were leathery. But it had a form of beauty to it, a beauty that can only be seen when the light is gone and all is the void. He grew a flower? Now, of all times? It couldn't have been him. Was the flower there before? Gently and carefully, the boy scooped it up, needle-like thorns unable to pierce his hard, calloused hands. It didn't wither at his touch like all the others, but lived on. He held it tightly to his chest, a soft warmth radiating from the dark flower. Slowly, he returned to the road, a small flower cradled gently into his care. Slowly, he returned to the road, a small flower cradled gently to him. He was careful as he walked, and when he tripped, the boy fell to his back, or side, to protect the delicate little flower. He was bruised, but the flower was safe. Grow a flower. Your flower has to be your own. As he walked, a lone man stood in the road by the horizon. As he approached, the recognition grew to match. Even in the oppressive darkness, he recognized the man. It was him. It was him who had first given him and her the letters in the first place. And the boy slowed his pace. He wanted to turn away and walk back from where he had come, but he had already been seen. He couldn't turn back. He couldn't try again later. He had seen him. He walked up to him. "Did you grow a flower?" he asked. The boy didn't answer, cupping the dark little plant tightly to his chest. It was small, hardly even worthy of being called a flower. It was as dark as the night, born of tears and sorrow. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't dripping in liquid sunlight. It didn't glow. It didn't dance to his voice. Compared to the countless flowers he had seen, picked, shared, planted, and watched die, it was nothing. He shook his head. No. "May I see it?" "No. Please, no. Please. Just a little more time. Please." Obediently, the boy uncurled his clasped hands, showing him the small flower held within. He gingerly lifted it from the protecting and guarding hands, showing absolute care for the tiny little flower. He looked at it for several minutes, simply watching the dark little shadow of a flower. Finally, he looked back at the boy and gently returned the little flower to the boy's hands. "May I see them?" "I'm so sorry." The boy unslung the bulging bag from his back, laying it glumly on the ground. It was now bulging, close to the point of bursting. Thousands, maybe even millions of little stems lovingly placed within. Gently placed, so as not to harm a single stem. It was still damp from the flow of tears. Damp and cold. He looked back to the boy. "Even after all these, you never stopped?" "No." "Why?" He had no answer. He couldn't explain why he had kept trying. Maybe it was because of her. Maybe it was because he couldn't live with himself if he failed. He gestured again to the little flower clasped tightly in the boy's hands. "Is that your flower?" "No." The answer was almost instantaneous. He paused a moment, thoughtfully looking at the little darkling. Then he reached into a small pocket close to his chest, withdrawing a small, shriveled, dry flower stem and a tiny, white flower. The flower was pale, like a sick dog, with spindly leaves that looked as if they could fall apart at any instant, and petals that looked half dead already. "My first," he said simply, observing the dead stem and tiny flower sadly. My path was not easy either. Walk with me. He took him by the hand, hardened and calloused by so many flowers. They walked a familiar path, starting just beyond that first meadow, where golden sunlight was beginning to peek over the horizon, illuminating the flower-filled ground. A warm breeze lazily wiggled the flower heads, casting colors and beauty in the breeze. "Do you see all these flowers?" he asked, gesturing to the fields of purple and red that surrounded them. "Yes." "You planted them all." "No, I didn't. You planted the flowers that spread to fill it all. So, you planted them." They continued, passing through forest and hill. Then, another field of magenta and turquoise, liquid sunlight dripping into the ground. There was a small plot of brown dirt by the way, with a single flower within it. They trod through caves and beneath the oceans, across desert and over mountain, all teeming with flowers the size of thimbles, bleeding sunlight into the ground, showing the world in 1,000 reflections, or moving at the sound of their voices. "Do you understand now?" he finally asked, stopping at a small patch of flowers near the base of a mountain. Leaves like leather, stems lined with needle-like thorns, and petals dark as shadow. Where did all these come from? There were so many flowers, so much beauty. How did he not see them all before? He smiled. "You," he said simply. "You grew a flower." He handed him a second envelope, containing a single letter. "You did well."